Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today on our field trip to the UC Davis Student Farm. We are so excited to have you with us today. We're going to be doing some really cool things together. We're so excited to be able to have you meet some UC Davis students and have the opportunity to be exploring and investigating alongside them here at the UC Davis Student Farm. We're also going to be able to draw a flower as a way to record our experiences here and just really talk through these ideas about what people are noticing and wondering as they're here working and learning at the UC Davis Student Farm. And while we're here, you might remember some of the birds that you might see or hear. Our friends, the white-crowned sparrow, the western scrub jay, the black phoebe, or the northern mockingbird. Or we might see some of those really cool birds that eat insects, things like the ruby-crowned kinglet and the bush tit, that are all part of our farm ecosystem that we talked about last time. We also, if we're really lucky, might see some birds that hunt rodents, like our friend the red-tailed hawk. So if you remember the last time we met, we asked you to do a couple of things on your own. We asked if you could to spend some time observing and noticing and see if you could either visually see or hear a scrub jay, a mockingbird, or a hummingbird. And if you weren't able to do that, we also asked if you could draw a picture of something that you observed from your sit spot in your scientist notebook. So we'd love to hear from you what happened when you were doing these observations and recording some of these different things in drawings in your scientist observation notebook. But without any further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it over to my friends who are in the garden and are so excited to be sharing what they're doing with all of us together.
Hi, welcome to the student farm. My name is Abigail Kane, and I'm going to show you all around today. I'm studying sustainable agriculture at UC Davis. This is my second year here. And what sustainable agriculture means to me is thinking about how we can grow food in a way that is healthy for us and beneficial for us, as well as being healthy and beneficial for our environment, for the animals around us, for the plants around us. And that is something that we strive to find here on the student farm is growing food in ways that are beneficial for us and for the plants and animals around us. And I really, really love the student farm. I'm just getting to know it this year, but I got into farming and my interest of gardening from my own school, my own high school back in the Bay Area. And I worked with teachers in my high school garden and learned a lot from my teachers about growing food for myself, cooking that food, making sure no bugs or animals eat the food that we want to be eating. And I really, really enjoyed being able to go in my garden at my school every day after school. And I hope you all get the experience to go in gardens at your schools or experience gardens in your own homes. And so first off, we're gonna just explore the garden a little bit. I think some things that I always like to think about when exploring the garden are what tools can we use to explore the garden? And the best tools are just thinking about our five senses. So just looking around, using your eyes, what do you see? We can look this way and we see we have some trees, more trees over here. This right here is a plum tree. And if you look close up, you can see there's actually little fruits. And those eventually will become big juicy plums. And we can continue to look around and just see that there's more flowers and trees in the garden. And then another sense we can use is our ears. We can listen And I think something you all thought about on your last field trip was birds and bird sounds. So one thing that I love to do in the garden is just to listen and listen for different bird sounds and see if I can find where those birds are in the trees. And then, of course, touch is a wonderful, wonderful way to explore the garden. Just finding different leaves around. And we can walk over here. You all won't be able to touch this leaf, but believe me, it is one of the softest leaves you will ever touch. This right here is a lamb's ear. And if you look really close, you can probably tell it's called a lamb's ear because it looks just like a lamb's ear. It's super soft to the touch. And maybe if you have a cat or a dog at home, you know that their ears are really soft. This leaf feels just like that. And then, of course, smell and taste are also great senses to use when exploring the garden. And that's not something we're going to explore right now because you aren't here, you're at home. But when you're in a garden, maybe with your teacher, that's something that you can explore. Just make sure it's something that you should be tasting before you taste it. And then one of my favorite things about watching the garden and observing the garden is to look at the flowers and fruits in the garden. I think probably most of you can agree that fruits are really awesome. One of my favorite foods is just eating fruits. And there's really nothing better than eating fruits that you saw growing in a garden and you picked yourself. So I'm gonna take you to one of my favorite fruit trees, and that's over here. It's the fig tree. And this fig tree is really impressive. It's really, really, really huge and creates a beautiful shade canopy for us in the garden. So you can see on this fig tree, it already has figs growing. But something that you might also notice is there's no flowers. The really cool fun fact about figs is that what we think of as the fruit of the tree, if you've ever had a fig from the store before, it looks kind of like this. Sometimes they're green, sometimes they're purple. But the really fun fact about figs is that this actually is the flower. Even though this looks just like the fruit that we think of and we eat, it is also the flower. And all of the parts that we know to be a flower are actually on the inside of the fruit of the fig. So if we break this open, you can see that it's definitely not ripe. I don't think it would taste very good if you tried it right now. And that's because these are all the flower parts. So this fig is filled with a bunch of tiny, tiny little flowers. And each of these little flowers needs to be pollinated and then will create the fruit that we know of as a fig. And another really cool thing about the fig is because it is such a special flower and fruit, it also has a very specific pollinator. So if a bug needs to get inside of this fig in order to pollinate it, it has to be a really, really tiny little bug. And you can see on one of these figs, this is actually the only little hole to get into the fig. So there's a very specific little wasp that actually crawls into that tiny little hole and pollinates the fig and actually lays its eggs there. And another really fun fact about a fig is once that mother wasp crawls into the fig, pollinates the fig, and lays its eggs there, it dies. And then that dead wasp actually feeds the fig and is part of the nutrients that we're eating when we eat a fig. So we're not really eating dead wasps when we eat a fig, but there was once a dead wasp in the fig that we were eating. And not all the figs that we find in the store are that way. There's different methods of growing figs, but generally that is how a fig forms. Yeah. And so now we're just gonna go and check out some other cool flowers, because as you can maybe see from this fig, not all flowers look like the typical flower that we think of. And most of the time there's a reason for that. And those flowers look different because they attract different pollinators. So we can look over here at this plant right here. This one has a bunch of tiny, sort of broad, flat little flowers. And if we look really close up, you can see that there's actually a lot of bees pollinating this cilantro plant right now. And we can keep walking and find a couple different flowers, explore a couple different pollinators here in the garden. So some common pollinators, of course, are bees. Also, flies can even be pollinators. Wasps can be pollinators. And birds can be pollinators. Moths can be pollinators. All kinds of flying things can be pollinators. Humans can be pollinators even. Sometimes if you have a plant that you really, really want, you have a big squash plant and you really, really want to make big pumpkins, you can actually pollinate that plant yourself by getting a Q-tip, getting some pollen from one of the big male flowers and putting it onto the female flower and growing your own big pumpkins at home. I know I've tried that with my family at home because we were trying to grow the biggest pumpkin possible for Halloween. And you can see these flowers look a lot different from either the fig or the cilantro flowers we've been looking at. These are kind of a black-eyed Susan flower. And I don't see any pollinators on them right now, but I would guess maybe they would be also pollinated by bees or wasps. We can continue through this beautiful garden. We have roses over here. Again, a whole new looking flower. Lots more petals, very beautiful. I wonder what type of pollinator this flower would attract. My guess would be bees, maybe butterflies. I'm not sure. But that's a really fun thing about just looking through the garden, is that we don't always know the answers, but the more we look and observe, we can figure out, oh, maybe the structure of this plant looks like this because it wants butterflies to come to it. And the more you learn, you might notice that actually some different pollinators are attracted to different colors. I happen to know that hummingbirds really love red. And I'm not 100% sure why. I think just the way they see the color red, they're very attracted to it. But I know sometimes even outside my own house, there won't be flowers or anything, just like a red object, and hummingbirds will fly up to it and think it might be a flower so that they can pollinate it. We're gonna peruse back to these flowers over here. They're known for some good butterfly life. We'll see if we can find a beautiful butterfly. And again, just checking out different flowers. So this one is totally crazy looking. This is like a completely new style of called the Columbine Flower. And yeah, just a really interesting thing to look at. flowers. Remind me what they're called, Carol? They're called Jupiter's beard or Centranthus. Jupiter's beard or Centranthus. I like Jupiter's beard. That's an awesome name. And we lost one of the butterflies that was flying around. Very cool.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I wonder if we might be reaching the end of our Wi-Fi and if you all might want to come a little closer to the garden house.
Yes, very good idea. So we'll head back towards the garden house. Just stroll through the garden. I don't know if the filmers have any questions for me.
I have a question for you. Are the wasps that are in the figs, are those different from the wasps we see every day?
Well, yes, they are. I have no idea how many, but a lot of different types of wasps. So when we think of wasps, maybe we think of big wasps. They kind of look like bees, but a little scarier. But there's actually wasps of like all different sizes. There's wasps like that, but there's wasps that are like the size of the tip of your pencil. Wasps that are that tiny. So it's wasps that are really, really tiny that we probably don't even notice because they're so small. Those are the wasps that are pollinating these out in the garden. Things that you think of as pollinators, butterflies, bees, there are so many different kinds. And especially bees, it's something, and wasps, something really interesting is just to like try and count how many different kinds you can find. Just differing sizes, or maybe they have different colors. We're gonna head back this way. And the next thing that we are gonna do with you all is a little flower drawing activity. So we went and looked at a lot of different flowers, talked about figs for a while, but now we're gonna get our friend Cedar to show you all the flower parts and just do a little drawing of the flower parts. Yeah. We're gonna pass it over to Cedar.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Cedar, and I am a student at UC Davis, also studying sustainable agriculture. And for this activity, I hope you've gotten your pen or pencil and a piece of paper because we're going to be drawing some flowers. And I've gathered a few different flowers here to show you, and you may have seen some already out in the garden. But I just wanted to show you side by side how all of these flowers look very different. Some of them form these clusters, which are really pretty. Some of them are individual, like you saw this one out in the garden, the black-eyed Susan. This one, it comes from a pea plant, sweet pea, and I really love this flower because I feel like it's really unique compared to what you would think of. Maybe you would think of this as like a typical flower, and this one, you might be able to see that it looks pretty different. This one comes from a plant called borage, and it's pretty small and cute. And I'm sure you recognize this one, the California poppy. And I've gathered these different flowers and different stages of the California poppy to show you what it looks like when you see it outside. So this is what it looks like when it first comes out. It hasn't bloomed yet, but maybe when you're walking around outside, you can gather some flowers and try and figure out what stage of life it's at. And it's okay to open it up as long as you're being nice and you're not taking too much. You take one and you want to look at it, that's what scientists do. So if I open it up, kind of dissect it a little, we can see that these are the petals that are going to look like this and are going to look like this. If we open it up even more, if I can do it, you can see how this part also ends up looking like that. And this is a really great tool in observation to learn about the world around us. Here's another stage. This one, okay, so this is when it's blooming. This is when it's reached its mature stage. And if we open this one up, you can see that these are all the seeds on the inside. This is how the flower is going to reproduce, by dropping these seeds and growing a new plant. I think that's pretty fun. So if you want to take out your pencil, I thought we could draw the California poppy. Feel free to draw it however you'd like, but you could also follow along. You can look at it at this stage and see that it has these 4 distinct petals that we can draw from above. Kind of has the shape of a rounded triangle like this. And it has the little spikies in the middle, which is also what produces the pollen. You can draw that. And of course, it has its stem coming down. And maybe we can leave a little shoot off to the side as well to draw another piece of the flower. This is what we looked at the beginning, that has the petals and the flower inside there. And it has this little bit, little half circle maybe, and a little cone coming up. Maybe we want to draw a leaf too. It's very feathery, delicate. Come off like this. Maybe up like this. Something like that. When you're out walking around, I hope that this encourages you to bring a notebook with you and a pen so that you can record what you see. And it won't be necessary to pick the flower when you draw it if you can remember it that way. Because other animals and people and insects really like these flowers too. So it's nice to leave them out there for those creatures as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cedar. That was beautiful. Yeah. So now we're just going to think a little bit about what questions we could have when we're exploring our own gardens. Whether it be your school garden, at home, whether you're just at the park looking at some plants. Does anyone have any suggestions for what questions we could think of? maybe we could think of what stage in the life cycle is this plant in? And Cedar was talking a little bit about this with the poppies. You can see with this poppy right here. There's many different stages. There's a stage where the flowers are in full bloom. There's a stage where the flowers have created a seed pod and there'll be seeds inside that will be the next generation of poppy plants. And there's another stage where the flower hasn't emerged yet, but it's just a bud and it will open and have all the parts, all the petals, everything is inside, and the top will come off and the petals will emerge. And I don't know if there's any on this poppy plant right now, but sometimes you can find a poppy plant where this little top cone is just about to come off, and it's not like gonna harm the plant because it's actually already coming off and you can just help it off. And I think it's just one of the most magical things ever. I don't know, I'm not seeing any at that perfect stage right here. Maybe that one? Maybe no. Well, if we find any, we will let you know.
I wonder what's inside this if you were to open it.
Yeah, very good question. Let's find out. Just gonna gently open it with my fingernail. Yeah, and we can actually see that it's filled with little seeds. So each one of these little seeds is capable of becoming its own new poppy plant. And a little later in the season, the poppy plant will enter a new stage. And so all of these seed pods, just like this, they'll dry up and actually crack open. And all of these little seeds will fly out and find a new home in the soil. Cool. So we're almost done here, but I encourage you all to think about what we learned in class. Think about how you serve flowers, fruits, pollinators in the gardens around you, and think about using all 5 of your senses when appropriate in gardens. And I would definitely encourage you all to listen a lot for birds. When we were sitting here, when we were filming this, we were hearing very cool bird life. I don't know if it was captured on camera, but that is something that when you are out in the garden is really special. Thank you all for coming to our garden tour. So fun to show you all the garden.
Thanks so much. Enjoy your day.